my mom had sent me a note and said, "You need to go meet Melinda, my oldest sister's new roommate." And I told her absolutely not. And then my mom came back and said, "She's beautiful," and then proceeded to send me pictures of her. And so I said, "Fine." And so I went and met Megan at the mall.
I tried to pass off somebody else helping him in the store because he came in with his sister, Katie, and I thought they were together. So I was very weirded out. There was somebody staring at me.
And she goes, "Is there something you're looking for?" And I said, "Yeah, you." So that was our first interaction. Megan just about lost it. She was like, "Who is this idiot that has a mohawk and just leather jacket?" I looked like I was in the movie Grease.
I will say it was, I think for both of us, like love at first sight. Katie said she felt like she wasn't there, so it was, yeah.
It was magical. We started hanging out a little bit, and we didn't date right away. I say that we dated within a week and a half. But so a little backstory: I was not a Christian. I grew up in a Christian house, and I hated everything about Christianity.
For those first few times we hung out, I didn't know he wasn't a Christian. So that was a surprise. I went to his sister, Melinda, and I was like, how is this person who is so vocal and so enthusiastic and passionate not talking about God ever?
I knew how to talk to Christians. I grew up in a Christian house. I have fantastic parents. I was respectful, but I also knew, like, I would just kind of poke and twist. And so Megan, one of the first things I saw from her was her love for Jesus.
A part of me was like, you know these things, you grew up, you know this. So how do you, like, I think I actually shared with him that I could see past that exterior wall that he was putting up. And I was like, there are gifts you have that God's given you, and he wants to use those things for good. It was like a week later that you gave me a call.
I pretty much couldn't sleep the entire night. Woke up and went to my dad, and I just said, "Hey, I was sobbing. I was like, I don't know how my perspective has changed, but I want to follow Jesus." So I ended up waking up and praying with my dad super, super early in the morning. And that was a pretty defining moment in my life. I proposed, we got engaged and married in May 26th of 2012. Marriage is super easy, as everyone will tell you. Yeah, it was curveball after curveball. It was a lot of two very different people. As any marriage is, you are not the same person, but there was a lot of minimal understanding for me to Megan, from Megan to me. I would say things like, "That's not how my mom does it." And those were always winsome comments. She always really liked those. And it was just, it was tough. It was incredibly hard.
I think some triggering things for us early in marriage that weren't helpful is that we both would get to a point of like kind of feeling maybe complacent or comfortable. And we'd both be like, hey, let's buy a different house or move, or let's get a dog, or let's have kids now, because why not? And instead of maybe sitting in a moment and being like, hey, this isn't really working, maybe we should be looking at our marriage and finding ways to make it succeed and to get along and heal and get counseling for our own pasts. We just threw something else in the mix to keep us busy. We always functioned very well as like business partners. And so we easily just would take that road to mask, I think, like the emotional and mental like disconnection that we had going on.
It was failure after failure after failure. And after about 9 years and 2 kids, Megan and I had separated. And at that moment, I was like, I couldn't have been more excited. I was like, let's just stop this cheese grater that we are in. I hated Megan. I loved my children, but felt like I couldn't live life where I could be on earth and have my kids see somebody that is a complete mental disaster.
The beginning, like March 2021, it just hit a point where I had kind of made all these New Year's resolutions where I was going to try all these things to be like the good wife, perfect wife, make this thing work. Because maybe if I just, fixed some of these things and I fell into the line of what I thought Michael wanted me to be, then we'd work it out. And it wasn't really working. I was like, well, maybe we have a baby. Maybe we do this. I tried thinking of all the things that could make us stay together and make it work. And we got to a point in March where he was ready to be done and ready to call lawyers. and took off his ring and was just like, we're done. And I was scared, of course, but I felt actually like okay walking away and just giving him to God.
I had sat down with Pat Cook, and he and I had caught up, and Pat had sent me a sermon that I had no intention of listening to whatsoever. It was talking about the testing of faith, and it went and said how the testing of faith produces endurance, and I was like, okay, this is super helpful. Thanks, Pat, for sending this. Thinking that I'm just supposed to just like muscle through this life. And then he goes and says, well, testing is not a test. And as he's saying this, I'm literally like, it literally piqued my interest because I'm sitting there arguing with the sermon as he's saying, testing. And I'm like, okay, great. And he says, it's not a test. And I was like, okay, what next? Like, where are we talking now? And he says, the testing is the process of a silver maker making and refining silver. He then proceeds to say that the testing is when they heat the silver up so much that all the impurities rise to the surface, and the maker scoops off the impurities, and he will do it over and over and over again so that he can see his reflection, like see his eyes and his reflection. And at that moment, I broke down sobbing. And I remember at this moment, like when I was sitting on my bed, that it was like, you didn't understand that like my love was unconditional. It is in pursuit of you. It wasn't like, I hope that you can stay in my family. Like, I hope that like you can just muscle through and pass the tests and do these things. It was more of a, like, you didn't understand how burning his love is for me. And at that moment, it was pretty earth-shattering for me.
And then all of a sudden, this tune changed and he called me. And it was like an hour and a half of him letting me know what had happened, but also apologizing for things that I thought he didn't even know hurt me in the past. And I was definitely not sure what to make of it. And we got together a couple times, and it just was so different every time. There wasn't even like this, it just wasn't coming through. The old vein like wasn't coming through. There was, no matter if I was upset or I was communicating that I was frustrated and I didn't know what to make of it, I was met with humility and just a reassurance of him not wanting anything, just wanting to tell me what God was doing and that he was sorry. I honestly, I couldn't continue on being separated because I was like, if this is truly a change, if he truly is like a new person in Jesus, and he isn't going back to what we had, how can I keep my kids from him, for one, and not continue in marriage, which God calls sacred, and this commitment is for life. We came back together, and it was rocky, but there was a peace that wasn't manufactured.
We've been meeting with a therapist for 2 years now, and that's been awesome.
I'd say the last 2 years since coming back together have been, in a sense, more difficult for me. For those 9 years that we were together, I had a lot of coping mechanisms, and I put up a lot of defenses that actually I felt in good spirits a lot of the time in a weird way, but I just didn't let myself. It's like I just wasn't going to let anything penetrate and stick. And it was almost once the apologies came, all of the pain and all of the anger came with it, and grief over 9 years feeling lost or whatever. Like it was just a lot that came. It's been very different from the first 9 years and different from that summer. I mean, we went from having parties, people drunk on our back patio, to going out there together and saying, we want this to be a place where the gospel is preached, where people are ministered to, where our girls grow up hearing the name of Jesus and hearing prayer. And I would say that the last 2.5 years have been such a reflection of God's just goodness and faithfulness and his spirit in this house, and being able to use it for so much good instead of, honestly, destruction.
Yeah, I love Megan more than anything in my life. She's my best friend, and we are in it together. We are not adversaries. We are not just co-working, but actually wanting best for our marriage going forward. And I love every bit of her. She's the best. Yeah.
He became more than what I would have ever asked God to have given me in a husband. But it so much happened so quickly, the way he interacted with our girls differently, the way that he cared for me in a way that he had never done, or quickly apologizing when he hurt me, the way that he wanted to serve in the church. It's beyond what I could have asked God. He gave me far more than I could have imagined in a husband. And I think so often we look at marriage as just this thing that we have to fix. But in reality, it's two broken people not able to function together. And when we take the time to work on our own hearts with Jesus and heal those things, it's amazing how all the things that seem so huge in marriage aren't that big anymore, and they don't matter. When you are both have your eyes set on the cross and you're running that race together, the other stuff is trivial, and he gives you the grace for those things because he wants your marriage to succeed.